Welcome, everyone, to the Credible Nerds podcast. My name is Justin, and we are here to talk Cosmere this time. For those of you who don't know, the Cosmere is a book series written by Brandon Sanderson. He is constantly writing books. There's many stories, many situations that are being developed on different planets in this Cosmere. And we are going to talk about one of the first that was introduced to us as fans. It's about Elantris, the book. It was released. It was one of the first books released, but it was wasn't his first book that he initially wrote, but he did. That was published first, so we're going to get into that and see how it develops, what we think about it, and awesome stuff like that. So, like I said, my name is Justin, and I am here with my fellow Elantrian, Kyle. How's it going?
Good. How's it going, everybody?
And this is the Cosmere commentary from the Credible Nerds. And so we are a podcast for the casual nerd. There is a lot of stuff to be talking about, especially in the fantasy realms of these different series and books. So we're not going to dive too deep. There are podcasts and websites that will do that for you. For the Cosmere, I recommend the 17th Shard. Go to 17thshard, shard.com, 17thshard.com. They have pretty much everything you want to know about the Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson, and Elantris, and everything else. So give them a look, as well as there's different other sites as well. But, it's pretty intricate. Brandon Sanderson is pretty intricate with his story building and all the characters and everything. So we will touch a little bit on that and what we like about it. But back to Elantris, one of his first books, like I said, and it was published a while ago. And I remember when I first heard about it, I had some friends at work. We all read fantasy books and we're like, hey, check out this one. Hey, did you hear about this one? And one of my buddies was like, hey, Elantris, new story, Brandon Sanderson. It's a standalone. You can just read it and that's it. It's pretty cool. You don't have to worry about all these other books and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I think we were in the middle or towards the end of reading Wheel of Time and like, oh, there's just a lot with this story. And so I just want like this one book. And so he recommended it to me and I read it and I liked it. But little did we know what was coming. Since then, there's been Mistborn, Second Era of Mistborn, Stormlight Archive, and all these other short stories. And it was the appetizer for this awesome meal. Yeah. What was your first experience or exposure to Elantris, Kyle?
Very similar. I had a friend who was... so I didn't read it when it first came out. I read it actually after I read the first Mistborn trilogy. And so I had a friend who recommended looking into some of Brandon Sanderson's other works, and Elantris came up. And similar to that, before I had read Mistborn, I had just finished, interestingly, The Wheel of Time again. Yeah. And I was kind of craving something that was more short and to the point, and Elantris scratched that itch. And it's actually, I think the premise of it is pretty simple, I think the lore that it dives into is pretty deep and complex. Mm-hmm. And so, I like it.
Yeah, I agree. So it was published in 2005. April 21st was the first edition, and then the first paperback edition was May 30th, 2006, I believe. So it's been that long, almost 20 years, coming up on 20 years, 19 years.
Wow.
So it doesn't seem to have been that long. I read the paperback, so definitely I didn't read it in 2005.
Right.
It was 2006, maybe 2007, but it's been a while. So like you said, it's very simple, pretty straightforward story, but very interesting for what it is. And we'll get into that a little bit. But kind of an overall summary of the story. We got Elantris was once a place of magic, and the immortal Elantrians were gods in the eyes of people with the divine ability to create and heal with a mere wave of a hand. Anyone in Arelon had the potential to become an Elantrian through a magical transformation known as the Shroud. But 10 years ago, a cataclysm known as the Raoden somehow destroyed the magic of Elantris. The inhabitants of the city became cursed, and the city was sealed off from society. Anyone affected by the shroud is now thrown into Elantris to stay there forever, still immortal, but cursed with unquenchable hunger and unhealable pain. So that's the premise of the story, straight from Wikipedia. But everyone had magic. Something happened. Now they're cursed. It doesn't work the same way. They're not able to perform these miracles, as it were. And so they're thrown into this once magical city and locked in there, and people want to forget about them, and they're left there to die a horrible long death. Actually, they never die. They just kind of
exist.
Yep. So they're immortal, still immortal, like it says, but they're cursed.
Basically, the epitome of all the bad things about immortality.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And so, pretty interesting premise. There's words like shout and Raoden, probably pronouncing them wrong, but that's okay. For me, anyway. Feel free to correct us. I'm sure people will. But in the story, it kind of explains what they are better, and you get used to the terms pretty quick, like most fantasy novels. But we have three main characters: Raoden, Sarene, and Hrathen. And the structure of the story was written, I read on Brandon Sanderson's websites and his commentary on the book, is that he wanted to write a story where the viewpoints of the main characters would be subsequent. Like you'd get, in this case, you'd get Prince Raoden's viewpoint, then Sarene's viewpoint, and then Hrathen's viewpoint, and then you'd go back to Raoden, and it was just kind of repeat itself. So it's 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 for the most part. I think there's one part of the book that it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
But I think once I read that, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's why. And I don't like it, to be honest, because it's like it forces you down a path that regardless of what's happening in the story, you have to switch viewpoints for the next chapter.
Right.
And if you could do it good, he does it well enough. But at the same time, I realized I didn't like it. It wasn't until I knew something was off, but it wasn't until I read that on his website. I was like, oh yeah, I don't like that as a whole.
I actually didn't think about it like that. And now that you say it, you're right. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. And it kind of results in some jarring moments in the story. So it doesn't quite flow like you think it should. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not bad. The story's still fantastic.
Right.
Great lore and everything else like that. But you're right. I think the changing viewpoints, or the forced changing viewpoints, kind of makes it less flowing less flowy as opposed to that's how it could be.
Yeah, and I think that's a good word that you use, jarring. But yeah, again, good story. I think if he would have allowed himself more freedom to have a Prince Raoden viewpoint chapter, and then another one because something exciting's happening.
Right.
Right. I think it would have been better. And I think that's why the story is so simple. Is because he had to follow that, so he couldn't, elaborate a lot. I don't know. I wasn't in his head, and he's a fantastic writer, so I don't want to criticize his writing. I think it was just a matter of this style wasn't the best.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree.
Anyways, so Prince Raoden, he's kind of coming of age. He's going to start learning how to inherit the kingdom from his dad. His dad's getting older. Kind of that point in his life, but he's stricken by this Raoden, where the
Sheod, right?
Oh, sorry, the Sheod. And so he's going to be, instead of becoming a magical being, he turns into the cursed being, and so he is like an automatic thing. They come in the night, they know he did it, or in the morning, first thing in the morning, he's changed, and so they grab him and take him in there, and then everybody mourns him. They say, and in this case, they said, Prince Raoden died, because they didn't want to admit that he was cursed, because it would bring shame upon the family, and things like that. So that happens at the beginning of the book. And then the catcher is Sarene. She's actually from another country. They're allies, but they've been kind of at odds recently. So the two kings are like, hey, let's unite our heirs and reunite the countries and things like that. So she's on her way when that happens. She arrives in the city, And everybody tells her, hey, Prince Raoden died.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. But they were engaged, so there's like an official thing. So she still had to stay there. I think there was a mourning period or something.
Right.
And so she had to stay there. And so that's the story, is Sarene kind of adapting to this new country, wondering if she should stay or if she should go. And in the meantime, there's this mystery of like, oh, maybe Prince Raoden isn't dead. And so she kind of figures that out as the story goes along. And it's actually really interesting how that happens.
Right.
Then there's this priest who also shows up the same day or pretty close to it.
Right.
Prince Hrathen, he's actually a priest from a religion from a country that they're at war with.
Right.
He's kind of like an ambassador. And he has his plans. His plan is to overthrow this country so they can dominate it, right? So these three characters, what did you think of their character developments, their overall place in the story? Did you like it? So,
I liked them all for different reasons. Honestly, the one I liked the most was Hrathen, right? The priest from Fjordell. So Raoden and Sarene kind of have your typical, archetypes there, where they're, Raoden's the charming, used to be prince who is loved by his people, and even though his dad was a jerk, right? And Sarene's the witty princess, right? And so, I mean, you see those themes played over in a lot of other things, right? Yep. But I really liked Hrathen in that, in kind of how he changes through the story, right? He comes to Arelon and he views himself as a savior for the people, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows that Fjordell, and with Fjordell's militaristic background, right, led by Wyrn, is going to come, and basically it's going to be a bloodbath. They're going to destroy everybody if they don't.
He has a time frame, right?
Right. It's like 3 months or something like that.
You got to convert everybody, or we're going to come in and wipe them out.
Exactly. Right. And so even though he's kind of got that militaristic background, and he approaches the conversion of this people very militaristically, right? He kind of views himself as the only way that these people are going to survive. And he's just recently come off going to this other city, right, where that happened, right? Yeah. He basically, screwed up the nobility such that it turned into a giant revolution and everybody, giant bloodbath, right? Yeah. So he kind of wants to do the quote unquote right thing.
Yeah.
Right. At least how he sees it, but approaches it in a very different way than what I would say Western society, like our Western society, defines as the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody knew that's what had happened. And then he shows up and they're like, oh no, he's here. Did you hear what happened to that other, I forget the name of it, those other guys?
Right.
And so they're kind of scared and they don't like him. They're very, they try to distance themselves from him, but he still has this mantle of authority just because of his office.
Right.
And they have to pay attention to him because what could happen, So it is an interesting dynamic there between him and the rest of the people there in that Arelon.
Right.
That's interesting that you like him the best, because I don't like him.
Oh, you don't like him?
Well, it's not that I don't like him. I think he was like, at first he was like, oh, these guys, I'm going to do this. He was all hating on them. And then he was very, he'd flip and he wouldn't do what he was thinking. Like we were reading about, his actions didn't match up with what he was thinking and wanting to do.
Right.
So I guess some people are like, okay, yeah, that shows he's really he's a nice guy, or I don't know, a nice guy. His heart's in the right place. He wants to do the right thing type thing. But I don't know, it didn't connect with me. Not that it's bad, that's just my take on things.
Yeah.
And initially, my first time I read it, I liked Raoden, because, he's the guy,
he's the dude,
he's the prince, and has the magic. But the last time I read it, I really liked Sarene.
Yeah.
I really connected with her, and I was like, oh, she's pretty cool, actually. I like her.
Yeah.
So I would say now my favorite character is Sarene, and those two, Sarene and Hrathen, had a pretty interesting relationship.
Right.
So
kind of like intellectual battle kind of a thing, right?
Yeah. And I did appreciate that. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
How they were always at odds with each other and trying to outsmart each other and all that.
And like had a reserved respect for each other too. Even though they were kind of crossing intellectual swords. And so,
Yeah. All right, so that's kind of the gist of the story. If you haven't read it, hopefully you do. It's pretty good, pretty short, like less than 500 pages. So, but anyway, so there's always a magic system in a fantasy story, especially in a Brandon Sanderson story, and the main magic system is the Aeon Door. And that's two words put together. Aeon is kind of the writing system of the people of Arelon, as well as the people of Raoden's people and Sarene's people. They're kind of descended from the same group, or they have a lot of the same beliefs until recently. And so that's the Aeon is their writing system. But the door is the magic system of the story. And so why those two words are put together is to manifest and use the magic. You have to write these, glyphs or
like runes kind of a thing. Yeah.
Rune type things. So you write what power you want to manifest, and then it happens. And that accesses the door, which is the investiture power on Cell. And if you read Brandon Sanderson, a big deal is made about investiture. Each planet, each story has its own type of investiture, and the door is the investiture of Cell. And that's basically the magic power that you can access by, in this case, writing the stuff. So as far as that goes, the writing, what did you think about that? People read spells and stuff in other stories. I don't know. Have you ever come across that before?
I've never come across, you have your typical, waving a wand kind of a thing in Harry Potter, but the whole waving isn't necessarily part of it, right? It's typically what somebody says, right? Mm-hmm. Or the words they speak. Whereas in this, it's more the symbol or the rune or the aeon mm-hmm. that they draw in the air, right? Mm-hmm. And it changes based off of how, there's a root aeon and then how detailed they get. Mm-hmm. It kind of focuses that power to do exactly what they want it to do, mm-hmm. right? And I thought it was an interesting take. The one thing that I thought was odd is it takes time, mm-hmm. right, to do every single one of these things, right? And so they could be drawing a picture for who knows how long until something actually happens.
So hopefully they can do it quick.
Oh, yeah, especially if something bad's happening, right? Yeah.
And so there's 63 known aeons, which leads us to believe that there's unknown aeons.
Right.
So that's an interesting concept. And each aeon has a scion connected to it.
Right.
And the scions are interesting because they attach themselves to certain people.
Right.
I think it's the people who can, I don't know. I was going to say, I think it's the people who can access the door. But there's more than 63 people who can do that at a time. So I don't know. Maybe that's where the unknown aeons come in. But Sarene shows up and she has one.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so in this scion is called Ash, has a name, it has a personality, and can go off on its own and do reconnaissance and come back and report. Very similar to Spren from mm-hmm. Stormlight Archive in some sense. But what it reminded me of, especially when I first read it, back in the 80s, there was this TV show. I forget the name of it, but it was kind of a Tron type show where they go into the grid and all this. And there was this, it was like a cursor. It was like an AI, or not even AI, but like this computer program that would follow the main character around. It would pulse and talk. Almost pretty much what a scion is. And so I wonder if we've got that from there. Because I remember watching it as a kid. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So little 80s connection there maybe. But and we find out later that Hrathen has one, hidden. We'll get into that later. But so they're there, and I think even Raoden has one too.
Yeah,
but when they get cursed, the scion goes away, is affected as well, right?
Right.
And they kind of wander around, not knowing who they are.
It's they lose consciousness, kind of a thing.
Yeah, they don't know who their master is, and
right.
Because I remember Raoden was like, "Hey, there's my son."
Yeah, Aeon Ain, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
So that was interesting. And so the reason why there's a curse, these people are like this magical process happens is a while ago at what do they call it? The
Reod.
The Reod happened at the same time there was this big earthquake. It created this canyon through the middle of the country. And ever since then, there's been this problem where the people become cursed. Instead of becoming gods, they are cursed and thrown into Elantris to rot away for the rest of their lives. And also the Aeon Door writing doesn't work either. And at some point, Raoden he kind of gets it to work. It like flashes, but then it doesn't take effect, doesn't hold.
Right.
And so a big part of the story is how he's able to figure it out and get the Aeon Door to work again and just get the magic manifesting again. And so people can, instead of these cursed people, they can access the power. At the end of the story, they access it and are redeemed, I guess you could say.
Right.
Are able to use the power and fight against the bad guys who show up at the end. Right. So when you were reading it for the first time, because the second and third time I'm like, well, come on, guys, don't you get it? Don't you know why it doesn't work? But the first time, did you kind of realize, it's this? Why didn't they figure it out? Or was it a surprise for you?
Honestly, the first time it was a surprise. Right?
Yeah.
Because you don't realize, you don't think about like the shape of the land being connected to anything.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, there's a canyon now, so what? Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the second, I've read it 3 times now, right? The second and third time, it's like, well, of course, obviously, this is...
It's right there.
It's right there. You look at Elantris, of course, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the first time I read it, it was... I was in the dark, too.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, I missed it as well. But basically, you brought it up, and I think that's a very interesting concept as well, is the writing is based on the geographic features, landscapes of this country, Arelon. And so the land, my impression is the land itself kind of is a conduit or releases the door for people to use, and so they have to draw these shapes, these runes that are based on the geography. And since there was the earthquake that created this new fissure down the middle of the continent, not the continent, but the country, they had to include the line representing this new fissure that happened when there was the earthquake.
Right.
And so once Raoden figures that out, everything starts to work again. So I thought that was really interesting concept. I liked it. It was a good twist, I should say.
Yeah.
Like we said, we didn't realize it in the first reading, but all the clues are right there. It wasn't a stretch,
right?
And it wasn't like, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? It totally made sense. Okay, cool. That's what you do. So that's kind of the Aeon Door, and then there's also another magic introduced called the Decor that the bad guys. We'll get into the bad guys with who they are in just a second. But one of them uses that, and that is more sinister. Like the Aeon Door is more magical or pure, I guess, more light based.
Right.
While the Decor is like pretty sinister and evil, and they kill people to use it. And
right.
Stuff like that.
It's all human sacrifice based, and
and it is kind of interesting that how that was brought in, and this character Dilaf was using it. We didn't know he was using it till later, and it makes sense that if there's this, the heroes have their magic and the villains have theirs, and there's a conflict there, and there's a clash.
Right.
So I thought that was really well done as well. So, I don't know, any thoughts on the Decor and how that worked and was introduced to us?
Yeah, I thought Decor was interesting because Hrathen has experience with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He first uses it.
He when he was training to become a monk in the Fjordell religion, we'll get into kind of who these people are here in a minute, but he was at that monastery for a little while, right? And part of being at that monastery is learning how to use Dakor, right? And that introduces bodily changes into a person, right?
Yeah.
And they're very painful. Whereas, with traditional Elantrians before the Reod, the change was it was a good, positive, kind of a blessing kind of a thing, right? For these monks on the other side, it's a painful granting of power, right? Fueled by constant sacrifice and pain, right? And so Hrathen ends up, checking out. He's like, I think it gets up to it gets up his arm and he's done, right? He's like, nah, this isn't for me, right? But you meet these monks later on, we'll talk about, that are completely covered in this, bone magic, right? And it grants them super speed and ultra strength, and then being able to use it to just do like even not menial things, but like transport to other places.
Yeah, that was an interesting twist to it all.
Right. And so like he had, like there was one, and some of the, I think it was Raoden found it absolutely disgusting that just for this pack of Dakor monks to like transport to another area, one of them gave up his life, and they're like, all right, poof, you're done.
Yeah.
And that gave them the power to then transport everybody to somewhere else. And so very interesting, odd system.
I'd hate to be the one that's like, okay, I'll do it.
You're like, we gotta go to catch a flight to this one's place. So eeny, meeny, miny, you're dead.
Yeah. That kind of sucks. So they convert, or their body actually changes. Do you remember what that changes to? I've forgotten.
Pretty sure it's bone, right?
Yeah.
And so it's bone. Yeah, so it's bone. It's very intricate, right? I think even Raoden said it was beautiful, right? It looked really, it's very intricate, very ornate, right?
Okay.
Gruesome for sure, right? But ornate and I don't want to say clean, but yeah, a work of art for sure.
Okay.
Right. But it's really, I don't know. It's an interesting take on how it wasn't necessarily quote unquote bad. It was just, I don't know. It's different than what we traditionally define as light or magic or good. Yeah. And so,
do you think it's a twisted or kind of, a twisted form of a magic? Like it was this pure magic or this good thing that happens, but they've kind of twisted with the human sacrifice?
That's a good question.
I don't think we really got that from the text, but
because with Cell, weren't there 2 shards that went to Cell? It was devotion and dominion or something like that. I don't know if that's right.
We'll have to do a little research. Again, very complex. So you got to have your Wikipedia open or your 17th shard open to kind of remember. Some people probably have it memorized by now. But since we're just casual nerds, we don't know. Devotion and dominion.
Right.
You're right.
And so, like, to me, that kind of says, so I would think it's all based on door, right? Kind of like when you think of Scadrial, it's all metallic, right? The magic system's all based on metal, whether it's ferrochemy or allomancy or hemalurgy, right? So this one's all based off of the door, right? And then on Scadrial, you had the 2 shards, ruin and preservation. And on this one, you've got devotion and dominion. So I would hypothesize that devotion is more or less the source of Aeon Door, right? And dominion is the source of Dakor, right? Yeah. But there's also other magic systems on there too. So I don't know how those all play in.
Blood sealing, aka forgery,
right?
Yeah. So I don't know. That part has yet to be revealed, which Brandon has said that at some point there's going to be an Elantris 2, which I think we need. It's not higher on his priority, though. Mistborn and Stormlight are higher up. But we're starting to see kind of these things bleed into other stories. If you review and listen to our podcast that me and Mark did about the Lost Metal, we get into that a little bit, how that appeared, how the door shows up. And it's starting to show up in other stories too. So that's really interesting. I want to learn more about it. So yeah, that's kind of the magic system in a nutshell. Pretty interesting. Does it hold up? I don't know. We'll maybe talk about that later. But for now, that's how it goes. Oh, one more thing is the magic of Cell as a whole tends to be geographical.
Yeah.
Or is it more hereditary? Or I don't know. It's tied to specific parts, like the door is tied mainly, or the Aeon door, I should say, is tied to Arelon. The Ducor is tied to Fjordell, and then this blood sealing forgery is tied to another area on the planet.
Right.
Are there other ones? Maybe. We don't know. So I don't know. Is it just geographical? And if you happen to live in that geographical region, you learn how to use it, you're exposed to it, you can access it? Or is it like hereditary? Like these people have the genes to use it?
And that's, I wondered about that too. And then you have Raoden's best friend in Elantris, Galladon, right?
Yeah.
And Galladon is a Gendo, right? And he's not technically from Arelon.
Right.
And somehow, but he and his dad owned a farm, or like moved to Arelon and farmed.
Right.
And his dad became an Elantrian, right? And so he grew up around Elantrians and everything else because his dad was one, even though they weren't necessarily from Arelon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it seems like it's more geographic, but who knows? I mean, there could have been, Arelish blood in their family somewhere.
Yeah. So it seems like the evidence is pointing towards it's geographical at this point. So, but they were able to use the decor in Arelon.
Yeah. So, you're right.
I don't know. That's interesting. I wonder what would make it geographical? Is it like there's an energy around this country, and so you learn how to access the door through that environment.
Yeah.
And so if you go to a different part of the planet, that's how you learn to access it. So you continue to use it that way. I don't know. Right.
Maybe it defines kind of how you can access it, and then it acts as like I was telling my wife about this, and she's like, yeah, they seem kind of like Wi-Fi access points.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To where that's your access to the door, right? But the further away you are from it, the
weaker the signal.
The weaker the signal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when they do end up going to, well, they don't go to Fjordell, do they? They go to
Teod. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind. But do the Teods have access to Aeon door or to the door?
I don't
think so.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe there's. Yeah, because if you were to draw, if you use the Aeon door and draw, you don't draw parts of Teod.
Teod, it's all Arelon.
Yeah.
Well, it's Elantris and with Arelon and the 3 other cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Sarene has a Sion.
Yeah. Interesting.
And she's from Teod.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah, got to do some more research, figure it out. So, that's the magic system. So, yeah, we've mentioned some religion and these other people from Fjordell. You want to talk about that?
So, there was an ancient religion called Shukesig, right? That originally kind of preached a whole like a yin yang view of society, right? And the prophet in Shukesig had 2 students. I think it was it
Doroth
or Dareth or something like that. and Korath, right? And so essentially, these two students disagreed on how Shu Kessig should be fulfilled, with one founding Shu Dereth that was very much a communal based religion, right?
Kind of hippie-ish.
So Dareth was militaristic, right? So it's everybody's in it for the ultimate, rule up to Wyrn, right? And so
you have to be obedient.
You have to be obedient, yeah. And so Shu Dereth essentially espouses a kind of I don't want to say a mean god, but a god that respects control, right? And he's kind of unforgiving. His name's Yadith, right?
Yeah.
And the way that you worship Yadith is by essentially following absolute obedience to those who are higher up in the religious chain than you, right? And nobody actually worships Yadith directly. They all have to. The way they worship Yadith is to follow the directions of each person up in the chain, right? And the only person that actually serves Yadith directly is the prophet Wyrn, right?
Yeah.
And so what that results in is a very militaristic and regimented society that is run on absolute obedience, right? And so it's not really a theocracy where it's a king, but it's very similar to it, right? Where you are you are a servant to your lord, and the lord is a servant to maybe like some sort of noble family, and the noble serves the king, right? It's very similar to that, but in a religious sense, right? Whereas the opposite, Shu Korath. Well, before I get to that, the Shu Dereth is essentially the main religion of the quote-unquote bad guys, right?
Yeah.
So when Hrathen comes to Arelon, he's preaching Shu Dereth to the Arelish people, right? Who, interestingly, have a Derethi chapel there.
Yeah.
Right? And Derethi priests and everything else like that, but they've kind of become lax in their devotion to Yadith, right? And so Hrathen tells them, all right, get on the boat and go back home because clearly you guys aren't doing anything.
You guys are terrible.
And so anyways, his job is to convert the people of Arelon and Teod, right, to Shu Dereth because they currently follow Shu Korath, right? And so Shu Korath is essentially the offshoot of this other student. And his belief was very individualistic, right? It's not necessarily you follow your direct leader and your direct leader follows his leader and it's a kind of a chain of command kind of a thing. It's more very similar to Western society, like I would say U.S. society, where it's all about you, it's all about the individual, and it's all about kind of, love and understanding, right? And so
more peaceful,
right? You're encouraged to explore your own understanding and your own interpretation of Shu Korath, right? Even when Sarene goes and talks to the Doma. So no, Domai is their god, who's very understanding and loving, right? Merciful Domai. They say that a lot, right? And so when she talks to the priest that's over that religion, he's very aloof and encourages them to, find their own way, kind of a thing. And so I always kind of like to compare and contrast what would benefit a society more? Like, what would create a more productive society?
Yeah.
Would it be, because you have the examples of Arelon and Teod, which are very, mercantile, I wouldn't say mercantile driven, because Fjordell has their own merchants and they do very well, right? Yeah. But what produces a more productive society? One that's driven by the individual, or one that's driven by, I don't want to say the community, but absolute obedience, right?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of compare that with what exists in the world today. And anyways, Justin, I was kind of curious your thoughts there. Which do you think is more productive?
Yeah. Well, I think it just depends on, like with, which one is it? check my notes. Shu-Dorath with you. It's the militaristic obedience. Who are your leaders?
Right.
Who are you reporting to? Who's kind of the leader over this country that you're in? And are they proactive? Are they wanting success, or are they more selfish? Like, hey, you guys do all this stuff, and I'm going to live high on the hog. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But let's say they're benevolent. They're in it for the country, for everybody to be prosperous and successful. And so to be obedient to me, you have to be prosperous. You have to work hard and things like that.
Right.
So I think if that's the case, then I think that would provide a lot of structure for a lot of people, and a lot of people like structure.
Right.
And because they don't have to worry about all this other stuff. They just kind of this is what I do every day, and I'm an obedient worker, obedient person. So it works for me. So I would say that one would probably be, if it's done right, that would be the most successful. Because with the other one, Shu-Korath, it's like, well, do what you want. Just be nice, be loving. But if you have a bunch of people who are chill and like good with that, what are they going to do? Because there's no motivation necessarily.
Right.
I'm sure some people will be, and in the story there were some successful people. But I don't know, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar interpretation in that for Shu-Dareth, it all depends on who's in control. Mm-hmm. Right? If you have selfish and non-virtuous people in control, then you can quickly turn into a very warmongering, miserable society, right? But I'd say the flip side for Shu-Korath is possible too, right? You have everybody views themselves as a population of one, right? You can kind of compare it to what's happening in the U.S. today, right? Where everybody is their own expert, right? And clearly I am right because I'm right. So
because I'm me.
Because I'm me and I'm following my own truth kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And what it results in is kind of similar to what we see in a lot of Western democracies now. Things don't get done.
Right.
Right?
A lot of bureaucracy, arguing,
and very little progress, right? Well, I'd say there's progress, but not necessarily a societal progress, I would say.
And the whole point of Shu-Kesig, the original religion, is that even being practiced at this point?
No, I think it's gone.
It's just.
But I think the Jindo followed, a form of Shu-Kesig. It wasn't Shu-Kesig, but it was closer than those two religions, I think.
So it's basically just the two at this point. But I think the whole point of Shu-Kesig was unity,
right?
Bringing people together. And Shu-Korath with the Arelons, they weren't necessarily unified.
No.
And there was actually this, like you were just talking about, kind of the rich were getting richer. There was that part of the story where they'd have these parties and there was a stratification there.
Right.
Not very unified. And even the king wasn't he caught doing something?
Yeah,
he was exposed.
Right.
For
like sacrificing a maiden kind of a thing.
Oh yeah.
He's following the mysteries, right?
Yeah. That's a whole nother religion, right?
It's a whole other religion. Weird, right?
Jerikai or something.
Right.
But he was kind of in it for himself as the king. He was enriching himself. And I think that is a trap of humans, at least on Earth. And so I think we relate to that in these type of stories where you become selfish. You always read stories how people are fine, they're humble, they grew up normal lives, and then they win the lottery or they go to college and end up becoming a CEO because they're pretty productive and smart, and they get all this money. And then all this stuff happens. They cheat on their spouses. They're doing drugs. All this.
Right.
They can do whatever they want. So then all this crazy stuff happens. So I think we kind of see a little bit of that with the king, Raoden's dad, and all of that. So
right.
I think that is the danger of this Shu-Korath type of lifestyle. Well, not to say that can't happen with Shu-Dorath with the militaristic obedience. But it's more controlled for better or worse.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And it's interesting because there are real societies that follow very similar mindsets, and to your point that you made earlier, it largely boiled down to who was in control for the more militaristic societies. You think of the Mongols, right? And the absolute obedience that they had to have to Genghis Khan, right? And they were they brought a lot of fear and everything else, but also a lot of prosperity to a lot of Asia, right? And so it's an interesting take on the human psyche.
Yeah. But what would you rather live in? Which society?
I mean, I grew up in the U.S., and so it's like Shu-Korath is like that's my society, right?
Yeah, I'm all Shu-Korath is more successful, but I wouldn't want to live there.
No, I don't want to. No,
I want to live in Shu-Korath society.
Exactly.
I don't know, but I think as in principle, Shu-Korath could potentially help people be more successful.
Probably,
but you have to do what you're told. A lot of people don't like that, including myself.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and we don't. That's the thing I like about this book is a pretty simple story, like we've talked about. But then you got all this going on, and we're not even really talking about the political stuff between. What is it? What's the name of the Teod and Arelon?
Right.
Like, there's been some contention there, and then there's Fjordell, who's trying to take over this region of Sel, the planet, and there's this whole backstory there that he only really hints at here and there, but you can kind of draw stuff out and be like, oh yeah, it's way more bigger than what we're reading here in this story. So that's what I do like about Elantris. Despite its simplicity, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Very true. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the main things we wanted to talk about. So as with every episode now, we do a top 5 list at the end, towards the end, and I'm doing the top 5. I chose the top 5 main Cosmere characters. So kind of the general overall story that Brandon Sanderson's creating and constructing, and they all kind of seem to be very similar archetypes, right? For the most part, like there's even like some of them I'm like, this is kind of a ripoff of the other guy. Just change the parts here and there, but
right.
So the ones I want to in order from least favorite to favorite, I guess. Number 5 is Kenton. And if you're not familiar with him, he's in the White Sands graphic novel story, which I actually like him. I think the reason why he's number 5 is because there's just not a lot of material on him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more White Sands stories coming. If you haven't read that graphic novel, it's really good. It's a very interesting concept. Pretty well done. I can't wait to read more about it. So, Kenton. He's kind of similar. He's going to be a leader. Then all his people, something happens to all his people, and he has to step up and be the leader, kind of. And he doesn't want to. He doesn't, so, yeah. Number 4 is Raoden. We just talked about him. Again, he could be higher, but we just don't have a lot of material with him. But I liked him for what he was.
Yeah.
Number 3, Kelsier. We do have a lot of material about him, and he's becoming more and more developed. And but I like 2 others more than him. But he's pretty interesting. I like where his story is going with the Ghost Bloods and all that. So,
right.
What do you think of Kelsier?
Kelsier is definitely one of my favorites. He's kind of a stuck-up guy, though.
Yeah. He has some personality flaws.
He's got some definite personality flaws, but I like him,
Yeah.
He is kind of the unending, he never gives up regardless of, like, he refuses to even die.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
And so, yeah, I like Kelsier. He's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, me putting him number 3 doesn't mean I don't like him. I just mean there's 2 other people I like more.
Right.
But I like Kelsier. He's had a pretty good impact on the Mistborn storyline and beyond at this point.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. I do want to know more about how he's able to live the way he lives.
Right.
Hopefully we'll get more of that.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever really gotten to, and I could be misspeaking here, but figuring out how he got his, hemalurgic spikes.
Yeah.
Right? I wonder if that's how he kind of stays around. I don't know.
Yeah, because his brother is still around, in the Mistborn
Right.
second era, and has more spikes.
Well, he's got all the spikes.
Yeah, I feel bad about that guy. What's his name?
Marsh.
Yeah, no, Marsh. No, I think Marsh is one of the crew. I could be wrong. Anyway,
maybe you're right.
You look it up, but he's really a good guy. Like he went into this ministry. Like didn't he go like undercover, or he was going to try and change it, and then he just got caught up in it and he couldn't get out. And
right.
I liked him initially better than I liked Kelsier when they were, at the beginning of the story.
It is Marsh. It is Marsh.
Okay, yeah. My bad. So, and I really like him as a character, and he came back in Mistborn Second Era, and I like you kind of see the old Marsh there, and like, okay,
right,
yeah, he's still good. So, anyways. Maybe I should have put Marsh. No, he's not a main character, though. Number 2, Kaladin from the Stormlight Archive. The last book, I'm kind of souring on him a little bit.
Yeah.
He's a little too depressed. But again, character arc, ups and downs. He's always had this depression streak going on, but he always rises above it. So maybe we're just in this downward piece in book 4. So maybe book 5, he comes out of it and...
I would think so. I feel similar to Kaladin as I did for Rand in the Wheel of Time, right?
Right.
Rand, yeah. I'm like, Rand is awesome. And then he gets like in this depressed, angry,
yeah,
sassy kind of phase. And I'm like, Rand's kind of a jerk, right? A whiny stinker, right? And then I love Rand again in the end, right? And so
he steps up, yeah.
I feel like Kaladin's kind of on a similar path.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah. And then number 1 is Waximilian.
Wax is the best.
Yeah, he's awesome. He did take a step back in book 5, Lost Metal, but other people rose up and were able to shine, so I appreciated that, but I don't think he lost. He became more of a husband-dad type character.
Yeah.
Which when you're reading a adventure story, you don't want the main hero. It's like Han Solo in episode 7. Like he's not a badass anymore. He's just this dad. He's sad about his son. Right?
Exactly.
But we still love him. So it's kind of like that. But as a dad, I can, like, personally, I can be like, yep, that's how I was or how I would be.
Yep.
Even though I don't want to read that necessarily.
Right.
I can relate to it.
Right.
Because I want the gunslinger Wax, the solving all these problems, flying around Wax.
Right.
We kind of get that, but not so much in book 5. But he's still my favorite character out of all of them. So
I would agree. Wax, especially the Wax and Wayne duo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wax is not Wax without Wayne.
Right. Yeah. So what happens next? But yeah, he was able to wax Wayne while Wayne waxed in book 5, Lost Metal.
That's true. That's true.
That was great to see because in the previous books, Wayne was always the sidekick and kind of the funny guy, the jokester, but book 5, man, he stepped up and you're just like,
oh yeah,
dude, he's awesome. And you just feel for him.
Yeah. So,
and Wax allowed him to do that. So I guess that's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my top 5. All good characters. Just want to know more about 5 and 4. And then Kelsier, want to see kind of more about him too. So.
Yeah.
Would you rank them differently, or do you have different ones on that list?
No, I might. So for me, and it's because of Kaladin's recent depressive streak, I might swap Kelsier and Kaladin for me.
Yeah.
Right? But it's basically the same list. If it was main characters, yeah, that's the list. Mm-hmm. That's the list for me too. Mm-hmm. If I could pull in other characters,
yeah,
then I mean Wayne's on that list, and so is Wayne's girlfriend, who's the shapeshifter. Starts with a T. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. Anyways, those are I like them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about what my list would be too.
Cool. All right. So you got a hot take for us?
Oh, I got a hot take.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how spicy is it?
I'd say it has the potential to be like an 8.
Okay.
But
I like
people might agree with me anyway, so it might not be that spicy. So we're talking about Elantris, right? Yeah. And about the magic system. We talked about Aeon Door and how these people become practically gods, right? And they can just draw what they want in the air and it just happens, right? My hot take is that in the entire Cosmere, they are one of the weakest magic systems. And they are not as cool as they think they are. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And reason being, I think, so we alluded to it earlier in that they're kind of tied to a geographic location, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't know that I'd want to mess with an Elantrian on their own home turf.
In Elantris.
Elantris, right? Then you got time on your side because they got to draw the whole picture, right? And so you could do a lot while an Elantrian's drawing a picture. I would
push a piece of metal right through the guy's head,
right? And that's the end of the Elantrian, right? Or I don't know. I don't think we've learned too much about how you kill an Elantrian, but
that's true.
But still, right?
Yeah,
they're kind of tied to their home planet. Their magic system isn't very. I think it has the potential to be combative, and maybe this is because we don't know very much about it, right?
Yeah.
But out of all the systems on Cell that we know of, right? You have the bone, so Dakor, Aeondor, the forging with the stamps and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
None of those, with the exception of maybe Dakor, seem terribly traditionally powerful, right? Like if I'm stacking things up, I'm thinking Scadrial, so with the Elemancy, Hemalurgy, Ferochemy, and then the Rosharan magic with the Shard Bearers and everything else like that from Honor, right?
Yep.
And everything else that they're cleaning house on.
Yeah, for sure. Because it just takes too long. There's too much prep.
Yep.
You got to learn all the aeons and what to write, how to write it,
right?
And then you got to actually write it, and it's like one on, you could have 10 on top of each other, and that, like you said, it takes time. Forgery, you got to have like the stamps pre-made.
Yep.
And then it takes a minute to do that. And then with the core, it's probably the fastest one. You just kill someone.
Right.
But there's probably some prep time there too to learn how to do it.
Oh yeah.
But it is the door. The door itself seems pretty powerful.
Right.
But the way to access it and use it, at least the way they're using it, it is weak. And it's not as cool.
It's not as cool. I think it has similarities to kind of like what is it? The true source or the source from Wheel of Time, right?
Yeah.
It has the potential to be something like that.
Okay.
In my opinion. But the way that it's accessed, I think, is weak.
Yeah. And what do you do? I mean, there's more than just the 3 countries or 3 areas on this planet. So what about this other planet we haven't read about? Can they even access it?
Right.
And if they can, how do they do it? And is it cool or not?
And honestly, I mean, you get like an invading Scadrial force. They just they come in with some hemalurgic spikes, spike some Elantrians, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's done. And they're starting to learn how to travel with their little ships and stuff. So, and we've kind of read some things about space travel. So it could happen, yeah. Plus, they can access it. One thing we didn't really read about, maybe because it wasn't developed yet as fully, maybe it was, but the 3 realms: cognitive, physical, and spiritual realms.
Right.
That really doesn't. We didn't really see any of that in Elantris, did we?
Not really.
Yeah.
Definitely in Mistborn, and even Stormlight Archive to a certain extent.
Oh yeah, for sure we did. But that's how they travel. That's how they world op.
Right.
Is through Shadesmar.
Right, the cognitive realm, right? Is Shadesmar? Yeah, Shadesmar is the cognitive realm.
Yeah. So how do they? Since the door is showing up into these other stories now, how are they accessing Shadesmar?
Right.
How are they getting it? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a good question. I can. So you think about Moonlight in the 5th book, right? She's using forgery, right, with the stamps, right? And so maybe that's like invested power from Cell. So maybe it's like portable.
Yeah.
But I mean, in that book, she turns herself into an Elantrian and starts drawing in the air, and it's working. And so maybe that's a forgery and is using that same portable power. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, there was the jar of door that they had, the white glowy
You're
substance
right.
that they kind of used to power their stuff. So they had to take it with them.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like someone from Roshar could go to Scadrial, bring their Spren, and access things there. I don't know. That's still
good
to be
question.
Determined. But yeah, anyway, that's different podcast episode. A lot of cool stuff. But yeah, I agree. It's from what we've seen so far, it is the weakest of the magic systems, the main magic systems. So I don't know. What do you guys think, listeners? Is it weak? How spicy is that take? I think it's up there, 7-8, yeah, for sure. Because it is such a big part of the book, and we're saying it's weak. Come on, Brandon. Why is it so weak? Tell us. You better be in book 5 of Stormlight or your next secret project book. Come on.
Yep. We got to know.
Needs more oomph for us. So, yeah, I like it. Pretty good hot take. What do you guys think? Are we missing something? I mean, all you Cosmere nerds, maybe I'm sure there's a lot of you know more than us. What did we miss? Why is it so powerful? Why should we not call it weak? Let us know in the comments. So we appreciate you guys listening, watching the show. We're going to do more Cosmere commentaries here coming up. I don't know what we're going to do next. Probably Mistborn at some point. And then Stormlight, obviously, book 5 is coming out. And then we'll get a break from that awesome story, unfortunately. But yeah, that's how it goes. Any final comments from you, Kyle, as far as Elantris?
No, it's a good book. I think if you're in the mood for a quick read, right, still in the world of and still in the Cosmere, right, Elantris is great.
Yeah.
You have the political inquiry, you have a magic system. Yeah, it's a good short story, simple, but I think you can pull a lot from it. So
yeah,
that I recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. It gets better with every reread.
It does.
There's also a short story out there, Hope of Elantris.
Yep.
We didn't really get into that much. Then there's The Emperor's Soul, which does address the forging and how that works. It's another short story, a little bit longer than Hope of Elantris, but definitely worth the read. We may get into that at some point as well. So, but anyway, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this, the commentary, this Cosmere commentary. Comment. Let us know we're crazy. Let us know we hit some things on the head, things we missed. We appreciate it. We appreciate it all. So, anyway, thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.